They thought it was just another rock drifting in from the dark, a wandering interstellar object, cold and harmless, drawn toward our sun like so many before it. But then, the James Webb Space Telescope caught something no one expected, a glow, deep red, impossibly symmetrical, pulsing in a way that defied every natural explanation. No water, no tail, no chaos, only carbon dioxide released in perfect balance, as though controlled by a hand that understood precision better than physics itself. At first, astronomers called it routine, but as the data streamed in, their confidence began to crumble. Webb's instruments showed a coma, a massive sphere of gas expanding evenly in all directions. The color was unlike anything seen before, not pale like ice or dust. It was crimson, vivid, and alive with motion. And it wasn't made of water vapor, which every comet at this distance should produce in abundance. It was made entirely of carbon dioxide. That alone shouldn't be possible. At this range from the sun, water should have boiled first. Every comet ever observed spews water as its icy core reacts to sunlight, creating tails and jets that twist wildly in space. But Atlas, as it was named, refused to behave like any known object. There were no jets, no random eruptions, no chaos at all. Just a slow, steady outflow of gas that burned with eerie discipline, as if something inside had flipped a switch and begun venting in perfect rhythm. When astronomers focused on its nucleus, the mystery deepened. Early Hubble data suggested a small body, maybe a few hundred meters wide. But Webb's infrared readings told a different story. The reflected light intensity didn't match that size. It wasn't even close. Every model pointed to something colossal, a nucleus nearly 50 kilometers across, larger than 90% of all comets ever recorded. That kind of mass should have been detected long ago. Its gravitational field should have distorted starlight as it passed, leaving fingerprints and data decades old. Yet it remained invisible until now. How? Some researchers proposed the brightness was an illusion caused by fine particles in the coma reflecting sunlight. But when the light curves were analyzed, that theory collapsed. The reflection wasn't chaotic. It was smooth, clean, and mathematically perfect. The scattering pattern looked engineered, almost like polished metal, a mirror in motion. Objects in space are never symmetrical. They spin unevenly, erode unevenly, collapse under their own irregularity. But Atlas seemed crafted to break that rule. Every layer of its emission matched the next. Every burst of gas followed the same pace. Its behavior wasn't natural, and its consistency wasn't random. It was as if someone or something had built it to act exactly this way. When the data reached NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, confusion turned into quiet dread. Because every comet has a voice, a frequency, a signature hum that comes from water vapor vibrating in sunlight. That sound, that tone, is what defines comets. But Atlas was silent. Spectral scans confirmed water beneath its surface, waiting there like it should. Yet it wasn't emerging. It wasn't even trying. Instead, just a faint trickle of vapor, 4 or 5 kilograms per second, barely detectable, a tenth of what physics demanded. The theories came fast. Maybe the carbon dioxide gas was cooling the surface and trapping the water below. Maybe the ice was buried too deep, but none of it explained the precision, the steadiness, the deliberate repetition. Comets are chaotic. They break apart, they spin, they fracture. But Atlas pulsed with order, the kind only machines produce, and that's when someone at NASA asked the question no one wanted on record. What if the absence of water isn't a failure of heat or physics, but a decision? That idea spread through research circles like a quiet infection. If a comet could regulate what it released, when and how, then it wasn't a comet. It was a system, a mechanism. And if it was a system, then someone had built it. Yet somehow, the discovery never made headlines. When Oumuamua was found years earlier, it filled the world's news cycles for weeks. Harvard astronomers suggested it might be alien technology. It became the most studied interstellar visitor in history. But Atlas, which broke far more rules, arrived in silence. No press conferences, no media frenzy, no public announcements. NASA's Sphere-X mission had detected it back in August 2025. It recorded the enormous red coma, the strange symmetry, the absence of water, and then quietly filed it away in a technical blog post no one read. No interviews, no discussion, as if history's most precise anomaly didn't matter. Officially, it was protocol. Don't speculate, don't panic. But inside observatories, whispers began to grow. Some said it felt familiar, the same kind of silence that surrounded classified findings. Others said it felt controlled. And if NASA wasn't speaking, maybe that was because they already knew what it was. Atlas didn't just look unnatural, it moved that way too. Normal comets are prisoners of physics. They tumble through the solar system, pulled by gravity, pushed by solar wind, forever at the mercy of random chance. But Atlas followed a path too clean to be an accident. Its orbit brushed close to planets and radiation belts, just enough to gather data, but never enough to destabilize. When astronomers reversed its motion, tracing where it came from, they found something that froze every room where the data was shown. Its trajectory wasn't a line of chance, it was a line of intention. The object had made corrections mid-flight, tiny angular shifts no natural body could achieve. Each adjustment required energy, precision, and awareness. Something was navigating. And when its path was compared to ancient sky records, a few researchers found that similar objects, faint points of perfect symmetry, had been seen before. Recorded by astronomers centuries ago, mistaken for eclipses or temporary stars, the implication was unbearable. This might not be its first visit. Atlas wasn't lost. It was returning. And now, with the James Webb Telescope locked onto its crimson glow, we're finally seeing what it wants us to see. Not chaos, not dust, not ice, but a signal written in perfect geometry. Because if this thing can calculate its path, regulate its output, and reflect light as though built for it, then maybe it isn't just a comet passing through. Maybe it's a messenger coming home. Every comet has a rhythm, a voice born from the chaos of its journey. Ice melts, gases explode, jets burst unevenly into the void, each pulse random and raw. But 3I Atlas didn't sound like that. It breathed in patterns. Its emissions rose and fell with perfect symmetry, as though timed by a metronome older than the solar system itself. Webb's instruments measured the CO2 flow down to the millisecond, and every burst matched the one before it. There were no cracks, no disruptions, no deviation from the sequence. It was mechanical, predictable, alive with intent. Beneath its stillness, there was motion too deliberate to dismiss. While traditional comets are tossed through the system like stones skipping across a pond, 3I Atlas moved with the precision of a ship following coordinates. Its path wasn't a random arc through gravity wells. It was a deliberate dance that skirted close to planets. Not close enough to collide, but close enough to measure. It mapped, sampled, adjusted, and continued as though our solar system was terrain it had traversed before. When the object's trajectory was reversed, it pointed toward a region of interstellar space devoid of any stellar nursery or gravitational disturbance. A void. It didn't come from anywhere. It appeared as though awakened. And the further the calculations reached back, the more it seemed to rewrite its own past. What scared astronomers wasn't just the movement, it was the silence surrounding it. When Oumuamua was discovered, humanity couldn't stop talking. Every agency, every scientist, every media outlet debated whether it was a rock or a relic. But when Atlas appeared, brighter, larger, more precise, the world heard nothing. No press releases, no announcements, not even a social media post. NASA and ESA labeled it anomalous, filed the data, and moved on. The discovery that should have made headlines vanished into silence. Within research communities, that silence spoke louder than words. SphereX, the NASA instrument that first recorded Atlas, logged everything. The perfectly spherical CO2 coma, the unnatural symmetry, the faint red hue. Yet the data was quietly archived under routine interstellar observation. The omission wasn't just odd, it was deliberate. More and more scientists began to suspect that NASA wasn't being cautious. They were being careful, controlled. Some even whispered that it wasn't NASA at all, but someone else making the decisions about what was shared and when. Because the deeper the analysis went, the less sense Atlas made as a natural object. When Webb focused directly on the coma's structure, it found something impossible. The gas cloud surrounding the core wasn't chaotic. Instead, it displayed repeating fractal patterns, not once or twice, but consistently over multiple scans. Each structure mirrored the same geometry, the same recursive formations that occur in biological growth or algorithmic design. It was order within disorder, as if the cloud itself was encoding information. Further analysis revealed that the molecular composition of the coma wasn't random either. It contained methanol, carbon monoxide, and formaldehyde, all common in deep space, but their ratios weren't natural. They repeated with mechanical precision, arranged in a pattern resembling protein folding in terrestrial life. No one dared to say it directly, but the implication was chilling. What if 3I Atlas wasn't sending a message to be read? What if it was carrying one to be absorbed? A few bold researchers began calling it a biological probe, not designed to communicate, but to deliver. Its molecular ratios were too structured to be a coincidence. They could be part of a chemical payload meant to interact with the atmosphere of any planet it approached, not to destroy, but to alter, to awaken something dormant. And if that were true, the timeline was already closing in. In late July, the SETI Institute detected something unusual, a narrow band signal, faint but repeating, coming not from a star or deep space, but from the region between Mars and Jupiter. At first, it was written off as interference, maybe a terrestrial transmission bouncing off debris. But the signal began to move, slowly in sync with 3I Atlas. The pulse had a structure, mechanical, synthetic, rhythmic, like the tone of an old rotating radar. For 17 minutes, it echoed across multiple observatories, growing clearer with each repetition. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. When SETI tried to triangulate the source, something impossible happened. Their systems crashed, data logs corrupted, antennas misaligned. Every local backup was wiped in a cascading software failure that left no trace of the signal behind. The official explanation was a weather-related power surge, but those in the control room that night swore otherwise. One of them, an engineer who later resigned, claimed he could still hear the tone in his dreams. As Webb continued to study the object, the anomalies multiplied. When it scanned the nucleus, the heart of 3I Atlas, expecting the cold, solid core typical of comets, it found nothing. No heat signature, no reflection, no thermal gradient. The readings flatlined. Every object in space emits something. Heat, light, radiation, a whisper of existence. But 3I Atlas emitted none. It was as if it wasn't there at all, or worse, that it existed on a plane outside the rules of normal matter. The data was cross-checked with the European Space Agency's solar orbiter, and the result was the same. The core was a void, a hollow absence, colder than the background of space itself, yet surrounded by activity. Gases venting, light reflecting, energy moving. It was impossible. That's when a new theory emerged, one that chilled even the most rational scientists. What if the object we were seeing wasn't the real Atlas? What if the glowing sphere of gas, the crimson light, and the fractal patterns were only a projection, a camouflage, a mask hiding something invisible behind the veil of physics? Maybe the true object was cloaked or hidden within another dimension of frequency, a craft, an intelligence, or something else entirely. Because if the nucleus was truly void, if it existed in a state where no heat, no light, and no energy escaped, then perhaps it wasn't a rock at all. Perhaps it was a window, and whatever was behind that window had been watching us long before we had the tools to see it. When Webb's enhanced imaging was run through multiple spectral filters, something emerged inside the crimson cloud surrounding 3I Atlas. Not noise, not random scattering, but structure. In frame after frame, the same geometry repeated. Spirals within spirals, lines folding into self-similar curves, recursive and deliberate. A fractal pattern burned into the gas, repeating across every wavelength. It wasn't turbulence, it wasn't coincidence, it was a blueprint, a visual algorithm imprinted onto matter itself. At first, astronomers thought it was a calibration error, but after 17 days of consistent data, the truth became undeniable. The pattern wasn't just there, it was alive. It adapted to solar radiation, rearranging in response to solar wind like an organism flexing against light. When researchers overlaid the pattern with known mathematical constants, the results were chilling. The ratios aligned perfectly with the golden ratio, with Fibonacci sequences, the same principles that shape galaxies, seashells, and DNA. Nature's code, written deliberately into a field of gas. If this was natural, it was the most organized chaos in the known universe. That discovery led to a wave of quiet panic. Biochemists were called in to re-examine the molecular composition of the gas. What they found made no biological sense. The molecules within the coma, the carbon compounds, the methanol and formaldehyde, weren't dispersed randomly. They layered themselves in precise densities like the folded chains of proteins in living tissue. Life imitates math, but math does not imitate life, unless it's been taught to. That was the moment the idea became impossible to ignore. 3I Atlas wasn't a passive object, it was a construct, a machine that used chemistry and light as language, and then came the biological connection, the one that broke open everything. When the comet's emitted compounds were analyzed by bioinformatics teams across Europe and Asia, a stunning correlation appeared. Certain carbon-rich molecules matched regions of mitochondrial DNA, specifically the parts linked to neural development and cellular aging. The overlap wasn't symbolic or abstract. It was literal. The same molecular ratios, the same chain spacing, the same sequence spacing between hydrogen bonds. It was as if the object carried echoes of human biology, or something that shaped it long ago. That realization led to a horrifying hypothesis. 3I Atlas wasn't bringing something new. It was activating something old. What if these molecular patterns were designed to resonate with life on Earth? Not to infect or change it, but to wake it, to switch on instructions buried in our own code millions of years ago? A genetic clock ticking quietly through epochs, now stirred by a returning signal. The theory was dismissed as speculative fiction until the timing experiments began. Multiple observatories around the world reported a strange desynchronization between their atomic clocks. The lag was minuscule, microseconds at first, but consistent, and it only occurred when Atlas was in direct line of sight. When physicists overlaid the emission rhythm of Atlas's CO2 jets onto the fluctuations in atomic time, they matched. The venting wasn't random. It was pulsing at intervals that aligned with Planck time, the smallest measurable unit of existence. It was as if the object wasn't just emitting gas, but manipulating time itself at the quantum level. If true, that meant Atlas wasn't just a message or a machine. It was a device, one capable of interacting with the very structure of space-time. And its influence wasn't confined to instruments. Around the same time, civilian observatories and research labs began reporting anomalies. Drones losing synchronization mid-flight, GPS systems resetting, clock mechanisms skipping beats. Even biological rhythms seemed to falter. In certain regions, hospitals reported inexplicable fluctuations in brainwave coherence during the nights Atlas passed overhead. It was subtle, deniable, but real. Something in the object's frequency was rippling through both machines and minds. Then came the void. When Webb's thermal imaging locked onto the object's nucleus once again, the data refused to make sense. The core's temperature had dropped to 40 Kelvin, nearly absolute zero. A body that cold shouldn't emit anything, yet Atlas continued to vent gas, glowing faintly against the void. The cold wasn't natural, it was engineered, a perfect sphere of regulated chill surrounded by activity and motion. That meant only one thing. The object was preserving something. Cryogenic stability that precise requires active control, feedback, regulation, and containment. It was as if 3I Atlas carried a chamber inside it, maintaining conditions that could sustain whatever lay dormant within. At first, scientists speculated it could be biological samples, a vessel carrying life through interstellar space. But others began to suspect something else entirely. If the object was a delivery system, it wasn't just storing material. It was maintaining potential, an ark, a vault, or a waiting seat. And if that's true, then the question isn't what 3I Atlas is bringing. It's when it plans to release it. The fear that began as quiet skepticism was now open conversation among astrophysicists and astrobiologists alike. The idea of a cryogenic vessel no longer belonged to science fiction. It had data. It had temperature profiles, molecular signatures, geometric proof. Every layer of observation pointed to the same unthinkable possibility, that 3I Atlas wasn't just designed to survive space, it was designed to wait. And wait for what? That answer came not from Webb, but from Earth itself. The Very Large Telescope in Chile, during a routine photometric analysis, captured 3I Atlas as it passed in front of distant stars. the data revealed something unprecedented: light echoes trailing behind it. After the object had moved, faint reflections continued to appear where it had been, like a ghost imprinting itself across the sky. These echoes didn't fade. They persisted for hours, then days, subtly shifting position with Earth's rotation. It was almost as if the object wasn't fully bound to one moment in time. Quantum optics teams at Harvard ran the numbers. The light echoes didn't behave like gravitational lensing. They behaved like temporal distortion, simultaneous versions of the object seen from different time states coexisting across moments. The conclusion, though unpublishable, was inescapable. 3. I-Atlas might not be traveling through time as we know it. It might be time, folding itself across moments, existing in all intervals simultaneously, a traveler not of distance but of chronology. If that's true, then what Webb is seeing now might not be the first time humanity has encountered it. Perhaps we've seen it before, in myths, in records, in forgotten sky charts. Perhaps our ancestors saw the same crimson light, the same motionless symmetry, and named it something divine. And perhaps this isn't its return at all. Perhaps it never left. After months of analysis and denial, something extraordinary and deeply unsettling happened. A rogue collective of astrophysicists and comparative mythologists began cross-referencing data from 3I Atlas with ancient celestial records. What they found should have been impossible. From Sumerian tablets to the Mayan codices, from the Indus Valley carvings to the Greek star charts, there were allusions to a returning red eye that crossed the heavens every 13 lifetimes. A light with no tail, perfectly symmetrical, silent. A mirror that saw the soul of Earth. For centuries, these stories were dismissed as myth, poetry, or primitive astronomy. But the descriptions were precise, too precise. The same color, the same pattern, the same stillness. Some texts even describe periods of mass stillness and ritual silence coinciding with its return, as if civilizations once awaited a signal, a call, or a judgment. Those same rituals are now being studied by SETI historians because the timing of those red-eye sightings aligns eerily well with 3I Atlas's projected orbital resonance. It's as though humanity has been visited by this object before, and remembered, just not scientifically. That revelation didn't stay contained for long. Within weeks, it had spread through underground physics forums, encrypted scientist circles, and data leaks. Suddenly, the question shifted from what 3I Atlas is to why it keeps coming back. And that's when a new anomaly was discovered. As Webb continued its monitoring, astrophysicists began to notice a strange discrepancy between light and gravity. Photons reflected off 3I Atlas were arriving out of sync with its gravitational signature. In basic terms, its light reached us before its gravity did, a violation of relativity itself. The only explanation was that there was a second mass, invisible and trailing behind it. That hidden mass, dubbed the gravitational ghost, matched the size of a small asteroid and followed the exact same trajectory, 312,000 kilometers behind the main object. No visible reflection, no heat, no emission. But its pull was real. It distorted background starlight and bent nearby solar winds. Whatever it wasn't just accompanying 3I Atlas. It was tethered to it. Some theorists proposed that the trailing mass was a companion probe or drone. Others believed it was the true object, with 3I Atlas itself acting as a decoy, a mask, a projection to distract us from what was following behind. If that's the case, then everything we've observed, every reading and reflection, could be nothing more than a shell, a curtain hiding the face behind it. As this theory gained traction, governments grew quiet. Communications between NASA, ESA, and the Chinese National Space Administration suddenly spiked, followed by a synchronized firmware update across every orbital telescope on Earth. Normally, these global updates take months to organize. This one was completed in 36 hours. Officially, it was labeled a routine calibration event. But no one believed that. Why the urgency? Why the silence? Why update every instrument at once? A leaked report claimed the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs had received a classified message confirming that 3I Atlas no longer behaves according to expected celestial models, and that planetary observation escalation was underway. The document was scrubbed within hours, discredited as fake, but the digital footprint of those encrypted transmissions remained. Something global had shifted. Meanwhile, back in the data, the rhythm of Atlas's CO2 emissions began to reveal a disturbing new pattern. The intervals between gas bursts were perfectly aligned with logarithmic scales of Planck time, the smallest measurable unit of time in physics. This discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Planck time isn't just small, it's fundamental. It's the tick of the universe, the quantum heartbeat of space-time itself. For any natural object to emit signals synchronized to that rhythm would require it to operate on a level beyond physics as we understand it. Yet there it was, a cosmic object pulsing in perfect harmony with the fundamental clock of creation. When this frequency was mapped across global atomic time systems, tiny irregularities began appearing in precision clocks across Geneva, Tokyo, and Boulder. The world's most accurate timekeepers, capable of losing less than a second in millions of years, started to drift out of sync by microseconds. It was small enough to deny, but impossible to ignore. Something in 3 I-Atlas's emissions was subtly distorting local space-time. Civilian observatories soon began reporting similar effects. Atomic clocks skipped, drones lost synchronization, long-range communication satellites suffered unexplained signal phase shifts. Even navigational beacons on aircraft showed fluctuations too consistent to be random. The distortions grew more pronounced each time Atlas passed a major orbital node. It wasn't just bending time, it was rewriting it moment by moment, molecule by molecule. Then, Webb detected a second thermal drop, even deeper than before. The core temperature of 3 I-Atlas had fallen below 40 Kelvin. That level of cold is incompatible with active outgassing. Simply put, it should be frozen solid. Yet the emissions continued, pulsing stronger than ever. There was no thermal gradient, no transition between hot and cold. Just a perfect boundary, a sphere of absolute zero surrounded by motion. It defied thermodynamics. The only explanation was that something, or someone, was regulating it. Theories spread like wildfire. Some claimed it was a containment field preserving whatever was inside. Others thought it was a form of cryogenic suspension. Not a rock carrying ice, but a vault carrying life. A frozen chamber drifting through the dark, waiting to reach a destination where the temperature would finally rise and the contents could awaken. And that's when people began to ask the question no one wanted to. What happens when it gets close enough for that chamber to thaw? Because by every measurable model, the object's trajectory is tightening. Its course correction has already brought it closer to the inner planets than any interstellar visitor before it. Within months, it will align with Earth's orbital plane. Meanwhile, the gravitational ghost following behind remains locked in perfect formation. When light from the two objects was compared, a shocking detail emerged. The echoes trailing from Atlas, those faint afterimages captured by the Very Large Telescope, weren't just residual light. They contained subtle, repeating distortions. Each echo wasn't a reflection, it was a recording. Every pass of light carried a variation of the same signal, a waveform hidden within the noise. And when scientists amplified it, the sequence formed something they could hardly believe. It wasn't random, it was organized, binary, on-off intervals structured like digital code. The pulse repeated, every 147 seconds, perfectly timed, perfectly stable. The same frequency first detected years ago in Oumuamua, the same cosmic heartbeat returning with greater strength. And that's when the final piece of the pattern fell into place. When all these signals from Oumuamua, Borisov, and now Atlas were mapped together across time and position, they didn't form separate trajectories. They formed a spiral, a logarithmic spiral, expanding outward from the solar system's center, the same structure found in galaxies, hurricanes, seashells, and DNA. It wasn't motion, it was design. And the spiral wasn't just expanding, it was pointing toward us, as if every object that came before, every interstellar wanderer we've ever seen, was just another turn of the pattern, another signal in a sequence, a countdown written into the movement of the stars. 2 weeks after the global telescope updates, something strange began happening in the data streams. Every deep space observatory, NASA, ESA, even private networks started registering faint synchronizations, like a global heartbeat hidden beneath the noise. Not in the objects they were observing, but in the instruments themselves. Timestamps, once perfectly aligned, began to drift toward the same repeating interval, 147 seconds. The exact rhythm of 3I Atlas's pulse. It was as if the object had reached through space and synchronized everything watching it. Then, late one night, a low-level data engineer at the European Space Agency leaked what looked like fragments of a secure memo. The message suggested that an encrypted transmission, originating from NASA and routed through UNOSA, confirmed something that had only been whispered before. 3I Atlas no longer behaves according to celestial models. It recommended immediate multinational coordination for planetary observation escalation. Within hours, the memo vanished from every internal server, replaced by placeholder files. The engineer disappeared, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. Across the sky, the crimson coma flared, glowing brighter than it ever had before. It wasn't chaotic like a superheated outburst. It was deliberate, a pulse that expanded and stabilized into near-perfect symmetry. And as that happened, every orbital telescope received a synchronized firmware patch. In 36 hours, the world's eyes on the sky had been recalibrated. No one would say why. When Webb's new readings came online, what they revealed was worse than anything imagined. The object's emissions were no longer random bursts of carbon dioxide. They were rhythmic, structured, spaced according to Planck time intervals, the smallest measurable unit of time in the universe. Each emission a quantum tick, matching the fundamental clock of reality itself. Physicists couldn't agree what it meant, but the pattern didn't stop. It grew more refined, more precise, as if 3I Atlas were tuning itself to the pulse of the universe. And wherever that rhythm touched Earth's magnetosphere, tiny distortions appeared. Micro-fluctuations in magnetic north, localized anomalies in satellite telemetry, clocks skipping beats, space-time itself stuttering. For the first time, humanity's measurements of time disagreed with the universe's own. That was when Webb's deep infrared scans registered the impossible, a second temperature collapse. The object's core dropped below 40 Kelvin, almost absolute zero, yet its surface continued venting gas and emitting light. There was no gradient, no natural explanation. Only one possibility remained: internal regulation. The object wasn't cooling, it was maintaining, preserving. It was a cryogenic system, and if it was designed to preserve, then whatever it carried wasn't meant to die. Theories erupted. Some called it a vessel for life, an arc drifting through interstellar darkness, waiting for the right conditions to awaken. Others whispered that it was a weapon, a catalyst designed to reset ecosystems through resonance rather than destruction. But Webb's new temperature mapping revealed something even more terrifying. The frozen zone wasn't random. It was a perfect sphere surrounding a smaller void, an emptiness so absolute that even the telescope's sensors couldn't register it. No reflection, no heat, no data, just the absence of existence. As though the center of 3I Atlas wasn't a physical object at all, but a hole, a wound in space-time where matter and energy cease to exist, a contained singularity, a miniature distortion anchored by the outer shell, generating gravitational echoes across time. If that were true, then 3I Atlas wasn't a vessel carrying something. It was the something, a machine built to manipulate the fabric of reality itself. And then, the light echoes returned. For weeks, telescopes tracked faint afterimages trailing behind the object, shadows that shouldn't exist. They weren't reflections or gravitational lensing. They persisted too long, too stable. When analyzed through quantum optics, each echo carried a slightly different spectral shift, as if each one came from a different moment in time. 3I Atlas wasn't traveling through the present. It was scattering itself across past and future, existing everywhere it had ever been and everywhere it would be, all at once. It was a being made of chronology. Then the myths came back. Records from Sumerian, Mayan, and early Egyptian civilizations all mentioned the red eye, a returning star that watched the Earth and reflected the deeds of humanity. It was said to arrive when civilizations reached a threshold of understanding, when their machines began to touch the fabric of the cosmos itself. The ancients called it the mirror of heaven, and their rituals of silence weren't prayers. They were signals of readiness. SETI. Historians cross-reference those ancient accounts with orbital projections. The timing matched almost perfectly. Every 12,800 years, the Earth passed through the same region of space now occupied by 3I Atlas. The myths weren't stories, they were records. The realization spread quietly through black-budget agencies and observatories alike. This wasn't contact, it was recurrence. Maybe humanity wasn't seeing 3I Atlas for the first time. Maybe we were seeing it again. And if that's true, then the object isn't approaching by accident. It's returning on schedule. Every signal, every pulse, every fractal pattern carved into its coma could be part of a cycle older than the species observing it. The molecular ratios matching human DNA, the time distortions aligning with atomic clocks, the gravitational echoes bending light through history, all of it could be preparation, a countdown. The closer it came to Earth's orbit, the stranger things became. Across the planet, geomagnetic detectors began resonating with the same frequency emitted by 3I Atlas. Volcanic chambers, fault lines, even crystal caverns started vibrating faintly at synchronized intervals. Animals migrated off-pattern. Birds circled in silence. Whales sang in harmonic repetition with the object's pulse. Earth was answering. The final shock came when Webb captured a new emission, stronger, lower frequency, and directed not toward Earth, but toward deep space. The pulse was clear, deliberate, and massive, a signal powerful enough to cross light years. It wasn't broadcasting randomly. It was calling out. To what? No one knows. Maybe reinforcements, maybe its origin, maybe itself across another layer of time. But whatever it's calling, the message is out there now. As the data settled, as the numbers stabilized, every team involved came to the same quiet conclusion. 3. I Atlas is not just an interstellar visitor, it's a mirror, a reflection of the universe staring back at us, measuring what we've become. Its silence isn't ignorance, it's observation, because maybe it's not watching us at all. Maybe it's measuring us. Every signal, every pulse, every correction might not be communication. It might be assessment, judgment. And perhaps that's the truth buried in those ancient stories, that this red eye returns not to destroy, but to decide. Governments can stay silent. Agencies can pretend it's only rock and ice. But the instruments are no longer lying. The patterns are too precise. The distortions too deliberate. Something is happening, not just out there, but in here, within the very framework of the world. Because 3I Atlas doesn't just reflect light, it reflects us, our memory, our biology, our time, and maybe, just maybe, what it's really showing us is the end of the beginning. So the next time you look at the stars and see a faint red shimmer among them, don't look away. You might not be seeing a comet at all. You might be staring into the mirror of everything we've ever been and everything we're about to become.